Hey, it's Drybear. Welcome back to another starter guide for World of Warcraft Dragonflight. Today we'll be covering the Shaman class, one of my favorite classes to play, especially in BFA and Legion. A class that has a melee spec, a ranged spec, and a healer spec that you can utilize. We'll cover starter builds for all three specs that you want to level with, going up to level 70 and beyond. And we'll go through some tips and tricks and how to play each of the specs so you're all ready to go for the expansion launch. I've already done videos covering which class to play, so if you're not sure what class you're playing, check that out in the description below. And I've also done a video covering the classes that got the best changes going into Dragonflight, so if you care more about a meta analysis, that's in the description down below as well. If you like any of these starter builds that we're going through today, there's an import string in the description that you can just grab, paste into your game, and you'll have it in your talent tree ready to go. It's easy as that. If you have any questions or comments for me, you'll find me live every day on twitch.tv/Drybear. Come by and say hi. And as we do with these starter guides, let's start with a overview section covering the basics of the Shaman class. If you're new to the class or just looking for some general, and then we'll cover the left side of the talent tree. If you didn't know, in Dragonflight, we got two new talent trees. The one on the left is your class talent tree, which means that this is available at base to all specializations that you choose. You'll have this thing on the left. So we'll cover this first because it'll apply to all of the specializations. Then we'll go through each of the specializations and give you starter builds, leveling builds to use for your talents and how to level up and use them properly. Shamans are your elemental masters. They're the incarnation of Thrall, basically. You're able to use elemental. Fire, lightning, frost are kind of the main ones, not necessarily the elements that you'd see from mages or even the new evokers. They have totems, no one else does, it's unique to their class, and then they use all kinds of different utilities. Unfortunately, and I mentioned this in my overview video for the classes in the expansion, Shaman probably get hit the hardest when it comes to this class tree because they used to have all of these utility effects available at one time. Now you're gonna have to pick and choose, so you may not have Earth Elemental, you may not have Tremor Totem, you may not pick up, you're gonna pick up your Interrupt, but you may not have Hex, for example. Like there's no Hex here for the leveling build that I have set up. So you're not gonna have that, but you will have to pick and choose to go through those. The general idea for Shaman is for Elemental and for Restoration, you'll be throwing up fire dots, throwing out your bursts, getting all kinds of damage on there, and then you'll be able to use your different totems for different effects. Restoration will get defense totems and healing totems. Elemental will get other bonuses, things like that. Now let's go through the overall tree here on the class side. You can see this is probably the biggest one in the game. Most of them are not this wide or this dense. It's because Shamans are just the Batman, Batwoman of the of the World of Warcraft world. They have tons of utility. They have a lot of options to choose from here. When you're just leveling 60 to 70, I think it's hard to pass up on Earth Elemental. It is a 5-minute cooldown, but when you summon it, it will give you a nice big defensive tank for you. It'll taunt everything. Got a bunch of HP, so when you get into a pinch or you have a really big pull or you're pulling an elite mob, Earth Elemental will be there for you. Super nice. Spirit Walker's Grace is going to be great for Elemental and Restoration. It allows you to cast while moving. The new Evoker one is better for somehow, but Spirit Walker's Grace is still one of my favorite abilities. One cool thing that we're getting in Dragonflight, which we didn't have before, is number one, Lightning Lasso is available for PvE. It's available as an ability in your class tree, which means you can use it. All specs can use it, which is super cool. And on top of that, all specs will be getting Thunderstorm, which I love. I love having the knockback. In some expansions, including the last one, it was only available for Elemental. Now you can do it on Resto, you can do it on Enhancement, you're good to go. Nature Swiftness is there as well. You can use any nature spell instantly after casting it. When it comes to leveling, you'll want Astral Shift. 40% damage reduction. This is one of the best personal damage reductions in the game. It's 40% on a 2-minute cooldown. You'll want your ranged interrupt. This is probably the best interrupt in the entire game. The ranged interrupt at 30 yards at 12 seconds. Still one of the best you'll ever see. And then you want some defensive options in here that help keep you alive. Nature's Guardian is great when this goes on cooldown, but when you drop below a certain amount, you'll heal up a bunch. So as you're taking damage while leveling, you'll jump back up. And then you have some nice totems that you'll want to be using on cooldown just to make your leveling experience better for all 3 specs. Earth Grab's one of them. You can put this down. It'll root all targets. This one's super great because you can drop it here. By the way, I can probably put this in the description, but there is a super nice totem macro that you can get. It's really just, it's up here under my name. It's just cast cursor. It's a cursor cast. I recommend this for abilities that you don't want to aim like this. Some you do, depending on how it is. But for a lot of the shaman totems, I really like, you know, your spirit link, things like that. I like being able to cast on my cursor. It's way faster. It's much more fluid, and it makes it feel a lot better for me. So it probably will for you. Once again, I can put this in the description as well, but it is just a cursor cast macro. You just cast at cursor and then put the spell name for the totem. Makes things a lot simpler if you don't want to have to do this first and then, you know, cast the totem location. So you have your Earth Grab for AoE root, and then the best M+ totem, Cap Totem. This one's super cool. You place it down, after delay, it'll explode and stun targets. And if you're running with this upgrade here, you can see it goes again. The Guardian's Cudgel. I recommend this. Super great for leveling. You can pull a bunch of mobs together, dot them up, stack them together, pop up your Earth Elemental if you want, and then throw down your stun, your Cap Totem, your Capacitor Totem, and then it'll stun, and then it'll stun again, and then you're doing more AoE, and you've got all kinds of crazy things. So super cool. Pick up Frost Shock and Chain Lightning. You'll get instant cast on enhancement, so Chain Lightning is still useful. You'll occasionally be able to cast spells instantly, so Chain Lightning can still do damage for you even when you're playing melee. And Frost Shock is nice. I put this on a very accessible key so I can kind of jump around, throw out the Frost Shocks, do damage. It's good for, you know, slowing targets down and kiting them. You can even tag them with it because it has no cooldown. Super great for any of the specs to pick up. And that's about it. You can pick up Totemic Projection. This is super nice. Some specs may use it more than others. You may find a lot of use for it. Some people may not even use it at all. But this is nice because this, unlike the Totemic Recall that we've had before, this one is targetable. So you can actually put your totems in a new location. Like I said, depending on what totems you have, it may be more useful to you on certain specs than others. And then defensive wise, you will want to pick up Earth Shield for all 3 specs. It's amazing that we can get this on all 3 specs. You'll be able to cast this on yourself. It'll give you a nice heal when you take damage and has stacks on it. Then you can also run Elemental Orbit, increasing the number of elemental shields you can have active. So you can toss this up, and then you can have you know, some other shield that you'd like to put on yourself. Super cool. So this allows you to have a lot of options and self-healing. Enhancement's going to instant self-heal. Elemental will be able to cast heals, and then Resto won't have any trouble staying alive. But as you're leveling and trying to keep the pace up, having Earth Shield is going to be a huge boon. And lastly, I'll touch on our mobility option in the class tree, which is going to be either Spirit Walk or Gust of Wind. Super excited to see these coming back. We lost these a while ago. Gust of Wind is one of my favorite all-time abilities to play around with. I think for leveling, Spirit Walk is going to be more useful just because you'll cover more ground. It removes all movement impairing effects, slows, snares, whatever, and increases your movement speed by 60% for 8 seconds, which is more than just a little gust forward. This one's super fun to jump off ledges and move around with. You can use Gust of Wind and get on top of things, but if you're just trying to cover a lot of ground, again, we will have dragon riding, but still Spirit Walk is going to be super useful. So that covers the general tree. And of course, in the general area, don't be afraid to take advantage of water walking. I don't know if this is going to become super valuable in every zone, but it is a unique ability that Death Knights and Shamans have. You can add it, and then you can walk across water with this, and you can keep it moving the whole time. So you'll be able to kind of just get on water, walk across, where other classes may need to use dragon riding or may need to swim, you can use it. So just be aware that that's there. Now let's jump into the individual class trees, and I'll give you a leveling build that you can use for each of them, starting with Elemental. One of my favorite specs to play in the game, definitely. And what's cool about this is we're getting a lot more accessibility options in the tree itself. Remember, you still will have Earth Shield, and then if you run Elemental Orbit, you can get 2 shields on you, which means Lightning Shield as well. Super cool, a great way to build your passive resource, your Maelstrom up while you have that. Now, while the Lava Burst isn't going to be as beefy as the Restoration Shaman, it is very easy to get a lot of damage out. And if you do run Primordial Wave, which I would recommend either at 60, you can forego some of these damage and pick up Primordial Wave. What this ability does is it allows you to apply Flame Shocks to multiple targets. You can use Flame Shock, which has a cooldown, and then you can pop your Primordial Wave as well, which gives you another Flame Shock. And then your Lava Burst will hit all targets with Flame Shocks. You can Flame Shock, you can throw out your Primordial Wave, and then you can Lava Burst. And you can see that it splits there, and you get an extra shot when you're using it. So super cool on your next shot. Very easy to get some bonus. Remember, we still have the Earth Elemental for defense, but you also get Fire Elemental on the side of Elemental. You can run with Storm Elemental. This is probably better for bosses. So I would usually just run with Fire Elemental if you're doing just general leveling. And then I would recommend getting Primal as well because they're just stronger. These are 2.5 minute cooldowns. They're super powerful, great for big pulls, great for killing off bosses and elites as you level up. And thankfully, we're keeping Stormkeeper, one of my favorite Shaman abilities. This ability allows you to charge up a shot and then make your next shots, your next lightning abilities or nature abilities instant cast. Which is super cool. And you can basically use this with Chain Lightning. It's an easy way to get a big burst. While I don't recommend it for leveling, you can still get it. You can actually pick it up twice in the tree, which gives you 2 charges of it on a 1 minute cooldown. So you're just dumping. But I do believe the elemental overloads are going to be more effective just for leveling. You would want to pick up Ice Fury. This one gives your Frost Shocks a big bonus amount of damage. Typically in raiding, this just is for moving. So you'll shoot this out and then you'll just throw out your Frost Shocks, but they'll do crazy damage while you have Ice Fury stacks on you. Really used for movement, but you want to use it just for pure damage while you're leveling. And that's partly because of this passive here, Electrified Shocks. Ice Fury makes your Frost Shocks deal damage to up to 3 additional targets, and then make them take more damage from nature, which is super cool. So one thing you can do is you can pop your Ice Fury. You can throw out your big shots here. Boom, 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 boom. And then you can throw this out while they're debuffed and do some crazy lightning, right? And zap them all together. And you get some crazy AoE out of this. Usually by then you'll have enough to drop your Earthquake. Same thing for the totems here. I would recommend a cast target for Earthquake, especially with Elemental and how much you can build your charges. I find it more comfortable to be able to cast target Earthquake, which is the same thing. It's just a cast at cursor. There's a lot of these for Shaman. But what that means is that instead of having this big targeted AoE that you have to click twice, it'll just go wherever your cursor is. So once you have enough Maelstrom, you can just dump your Earthquakes, especially with the raid and dungeon builds you'll be using later where you get multiple Earthquakes and Earthquake procs for AoE. I think it makes it a lot more comfortable. And for Maelstrom spending, that single target, obviously you'll be using Earth Shock. There's some cool things here that I wouldn't really end up using for leveling, but it's going to be fun when you get to level 70 spending with Earth Shock. But Earth Shock for single target, Earthquake for AoE, and that combination will serve you well. And then as you get more points while leveling, you'll get a point in spec and then class and then spec, and it will alternate as you level up. You can work your way down to Elemental Equilibrium and then pick up the second Stormkeeper if you want to be able to just burn down more as you get to level 70. But there's a couple other options here that you would want to pick if you decided to. And if you go with Primordial Wave, your rotation is quite simple. Or even if you don't, all you have to do is just pop your Fire Elemental on cooldown, make sure that's being used. Pop whatever cooldowns you have. You have Bloodlust, whatever racials you have, pop yourself up. You can throw out your Ice Fury, get up your Lightning, and then just use this to do the AoE on Frost Shock. And then you can go AoEs here, and if there's big targets, you can dump out the Earthquakes, get a bunch of them in there, a little bit more of the Frost Shocks, a little bit more of the AoE, and you just keep rotating that way. If targets get too close to you, you can use Thunderstorm as you level up, unlock that there. You can Spirit Walker's Grace, which allows you to cast while moving, which is super cool to have this for Elemental, because you can see that I'm moving while casting this. I didn't always have this, which is nice. And that's basically it. Use your cooldowns, dump these, go Ice Fury into Stormkeeper, keep up your Electrified Shocks. If Electrified Shocks isn't up, use it. If you have stacks of Ice Fury, dump your Frost Shocks. If you don't, make sure you're using your Lava Burst on cooldown. If you have Primordial Wave, you can stack Flame Shock on multiple targets and then AoE them down as well, which is super cool. And then just, get your procs. As you get higher and higher, the procs will come faster, the damage will keep popping, And I think in general, Elemental is a very streamlined leveling experience. You're not really ever in major danger. You have a lot of defenses, a lot of options. You can Earth Elemental if you get into trouble. And then that will be affected also by your Primal Elementalist, by the way. You have plenty of totems, a lot of slowing, a lot of self-healing. You can cast things up, defense, all that. So you're kind of kitted. Elemental is a very smooth leveling experience. Next, let's talk about Enhancement. Super fun. Very fast, very proc heavy. You have a lot more movement options in this expansion than previously. Unfortunately, we're losing Chain Harvest, which was the Venthyr ability. Super fun to use, but probably a little broken. Sometimes it's fun to be broken, but here we are. And this is the build that I'd recommend. Again, if you want to use this, you can import it into game. The string is down below in the description, and you can import this. This is just a leveling build, for Enhancement. Now, in the past, Enhancement hasn't been the best in leveling experience, just because they're so gear dependent, and many times they don't have access to many abilities right off the bat. But in this expansion, as is the theme, this Enhancement is much improved for leveling. We have things like Fire Nova now. Crash Lightning is still available. That one didn't go away. And then we have new ways to proc and develop, and we have some defensive options here, some mobility options. We still have Earth Shield plus Elemental Orbit, and we have Earth Elementals. Like all these things are coming, so we have more defensive options, which is super cool. We also have something that is super awesome. One thing is Wind Fury Weapon, which we've always had. You want to re-imbue these Wind Fury Weapon and your Flame Tongue Weapon every hour. This lasts an hour, so make sure that you have this on you at all times. It'll give you your Maelstrom Weapon. But what's cool about this is passive effects like improved Maelstrom Weapon. Maelstrom Weapon now means that when you get Maelstrom Weapon stacks from your Wind Fury Weapon, you will increase the damage or healing of the next spell by 20% per stack, which doubles it. So it could be a super big heal, or it could be a super big Chain Lightning, or something like that. Really, really cool. So you can stack that up, get some nice bonuses, and paying attention to these stacks, keeping your Wind Fury and Flame Tongue active on you at all times is going to make the leveling experience really smooth. In the case of Enhancement, I would pick up Primordial Wave. This one allows you to mark a target with Flame Shock. And in the case of Enhancement rather than Elemental, you will end up using your Lightning Bolt, and that will stack to multiple targets. So it kind of turns it into a Chain Lightning, which is pretty sweet for leveling. Now, when it comes to leveling for Enhancement, you have some options. The build that I have linked here as a leveling build for general purpose, remember, you can go down in the description, copy the link, and import it in here. It has picked up a lot of the passive effects. Things like Storm Flurry, things like Storm's Wrath. All of this will just trigger on its own. It'll be very easy, very straightforward, casual leveling. But it will be not as efficient as picking up some active abilities like Doom Winds. Super cool. Sundering, lots of good AoE. The thing about Doom Wind, Sundering, and putting all these abilities together, Ice Strike, is that you have to manage more cooldowns, you have to manage more procs, and you have to be more aware and tuned in as you're leveling, which I didn't want to put that as my general leveling build for Enhancement. But if you do want to, you can move into Sundering, Doom Winds, Elemental Blast can be pretty useful too. It's just more buttons, and it's not as easy as Storm Flurry, for example, stacking up. You will still want to improve Maelstrom Weapon because it's bonkers. But overall, that's just something to be aware of. When it comes to rotation, you just want to keep your abilities on cooldown. Make sure you're using your Feral Spirit, your Dogs. Dogs are super strong. They'll give you a lot of really cool bonus damage, and they can help burn down enemies. On top of that, make sure you have Crash Lightning. This will spread out your damage from Storm Strike. Be using your Lava Lash as well. And then in single target, you can just be dumping Lava Burst if you have 5 stacks of Maelstrom. If you have 10 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon, then you want to be doing your either a Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, depending on if you have Primordial Wave or you just need single target. The next thing to think about, especially if you're using Primordial Wave, is the awesomeness that is Fire Nova. So while you have targets that are flame shocking right now, you'll be able to stack this up and burn it on. And then you can activate Fire Nova, which will pulse an AoE from all targets that have flame shock on them. So if you're doing a big AoE pool, pop all your cooldowns, get Crash Lightning going, and then when you have the maximum number of flame shocks out, pop that Fire Nova, see the numbers ripple, and yeah, you're good to go. And then as you unlock more points, I would move down into Primal Maelstrom, down into Splintered Elements. This is when you use the Primordial Wave, you'll get some nice haste, which is excellent for Enhancement. It gives you more stacks, it procs more hits, it gives you more main attacks. All around just makes life very, very, very smooth for Enhancement. And since they are melee, they'll have to put in more effort to move around and place for elemental, but they play so fast and furious. They're a lot of fun. So that is enhancement. You'll find the build down below. Lastly, let's talk about Restoration Shaman. It's been my main in several expansions. Super fun, very diverse kit. It's nice that we're going to have some options here. You're going to get Thunderstorm. Excited about that. You're going to get Lightning Lasso. Excited about that. You lose a little bit of choices here for your utility. It's going to be fine. We'll make it through. You probably don't want to pick up Hex, but Earth Elemental, super useful. Earth Shield, and then stacking Elemental Orbit you'll want to pick up as well. But another addition that Resto's getting is we do now get Stormkeeper. We didn't have this before, but that's super cool. So now we can stack this up, and then you can do Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning, and you can go big AoE, right? So you actually have that extra benefit. Nice. Gives a little bit more nature damage in there. The big beefy hit for Restoration has always been their big massive lava bursts. This is still the same in Dragonflight. So you want to put up the fire, the flame shock, and then just lava burst on cooldown and keep that rolling. I also recommend running Lava Surge because while your flame shock is ticking, it has a chance to reduce the cooldown on lava burst and makes it instant. You'll get some markers on the side of your screen while it's ticking, which means you'll get a nice pop. And this actually adds the stack even if you're currently casting one, which is super nice. Makes you just pump out damage, which is really cool. Other than that, it's healer leveling. It's pretty straightforward. I imagine if you want to play a healer to level, you're going to level faster as elemental enhancement, but you will be able to do dungeons quicker with Restoration. And at the end of the day, it's all about fun. It's whatever you want to do. I think if you're queuing for dungeons while you play as healer or tank, while you will clear slower than DPS, I think you'll end up equaling or maybe even surpassing them in XP just because the dungeons are going to come so quickly. But other than that, a lot of these are in here just as defensives and healing. Not really much that matters too much for your, I mean, even primarily Wave only works on healing for Riptide, so it's not going to have that Flame Shock Ripple that Enhancement and Elemental had. I do recommend picking up the Earth and Wall totem. This is one of the secret best totems in the game. It's like a crazy absorb passive damage reduction for everyone in the area, so you can pop it down on the ground, and then you can stand in it, and you're good to go. Master the Elements, super useful. You want to make sure you have this up for leveling, and on top and beyond that, you're just throwing out Flame Shocks, throwing out your Lava Burst, getting a bunch of burst damage there. You can pop your Stormkeeper and do some AoE with Chain Lightning, and then just make sure you're running, your Cap Totems for stunning, and keep yourself alive with all that. Make sure you're using your Bloodlust as well. And then you'll get your way through all the way to max rank. And that's it. Again, this is down in the description. All you have to do is copy the string in the description, paste it here, give it a name, and you've got yourself a build in game. And if you want to level, there you go. So that's Shaman. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like down below. If you're looking for more content out of me for Dragonflight or any game really, let me know. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Happy expansion, happy leveling, good luck out there. We'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed yourself today, leave a like down below. You can support me and my work on Patreon and view Patreon exclusive content, link in the description. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.